Coming to you live from the KQCK radio station compound, nestled in the beautiful Santan Mountains. Marc J. Victor, world-renowned man of peace and attorney for freedom. In a world of coercion and war, a peaceful man stands tall. Now, for your weekly dose of freedom and peace. A peaceful man stands tall. Ladies and gentlemen, the man of peace himself, Marc J. Victor, brings to you the Attorney for Freedom show.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As you can tell again, no, I'm not Marc Victor. Marc has been very busy lately, and as such, I've been filling in for him. We may end up calling this the Mike Wasden show. I'm not sure.
What the heck happened?
I think we've got a little.
What happened to your mic?
I don't know. Do we have technical?
Did you turn the mic off?
I don't know, Joe.
Mike Wazzy.
Am I on? Hello. Is this on? It's not
Here,
on.
just grab that one. I don't know what the heck happened.
Okay,
we just finished the show. What's up?
All right, that's better. Okay, sorry
Here,
about
I
that.
can push it towards you if you want.
All right, we had a little bit of
How's that?
technical difficulties there.
Aye.
As I was saying, I think we're going to rename this the Mike Wasden Show because I've been filling in for Marc a lot lately. He's been very busy. But at any rate, we're going to have a good show today. I brought on a friend today. His name is Johnny Ray, but we call him C. The reason we call him C is because nobody can pronounce his last name. I'm going to let C do that. C, what's your last name?
My last name is Canestraro. Marc and I were in the Marine Corps together, and that's where C came from.
Yeah, they just called him C because nobody could ever say Canestraro. too hard to say. But they served in the Marine Corps together. A very good friend of Marc's, and subsequently became a friend of mine over the last few years. And I brought him in today because we wanted to talk a little bit about a subject that he called in about a few weeks ago. So we'll go over that in a little bit. But before we get to that, a lot going on in the news right now. Wow, what a day it was yesterday. Rand Paul filibuster. Big day yesterday in the news. I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people know about it by now, but if you don't, I'll fill you in a little bit. Basically, Rand Paul sent a letter asking if it all comes down to asking if it was about the John Brennan confirmation for the CIA. He sent a letter and wanted to know about these drones. Would drones be used to target Americans on American soil? And he never really got a response that he liked. The response was sort of like, well, we could, but we would never do that, or maybe, but it was a very unsure response. He didn't like it because he didn't get the response he was looking for, which was, hell no, we would never do something like that. So because of that, he decided he would filibuster and not allow the confirmation. So he spoke for some 13 hours yesterday on the Senate floor and actually invited some of the other senators to participate, but he never yielded his time. And being that he never yielded his time, he could stay there for as long as he wanted and did, and the confirmation didn't take place. So very historic day yesterday and a very patriotic thing to do. I don't know why anybody would look at it any other way, but apparently some of the news stories today I was reading was the Democrats are saying negative things about this. So apparently standing up for Americans to retain the right to due process, for some Democrats anyway, doesn't seem like a good thing. I would definitely like to question those as to why that would be, but some feel that way, I guess. So very good day yesterday for that, and we were having a good time watching a lot of that yesterday. It was fun. He talked about everything from gave history lessons and things like that. I think he even covered some nursery rhymes yesterday during the filibuster, just to fill in time. It was funny. It was very funny. So that was one of the things that was big news yesterday. Another thing I want to talk about was something that happened last week. A student was suspended after disarming another student who had a gun. And this took place in Fort Myers, Florida. A student who was also a wrestler wrestled away a loaded gun from another student on a school bus who was pointing it at a student. And the student that took the gun away was the one suspended. Of course, the other student was arrested, of course, but the student that actually intervened and took the gun away from the other student, he was the one that got suspended because of this, of course, the zero gun tolerance the school has. he was involved in a gun incident. It didn't matter that he was involved in a gun incident that involved him possibly saving someone's life. That didn't matter. He was involved in a gun incident, so therefore he must be suspended. This is the kind of craziness that we've come to in this country, and it just I don't know. This particular story really makes me angry, because you have a right to defend someone to the extent that they have a right to defend themselves. So, if someone, in this case, was using deadly force, you have a right to step in that person's shoes and defend them if they have a right to do so themselves. Of course, in this case, they would. If somebody's pointing a gun at you, you certainly have a right to defend yourself. So he didn't use deadly physical force to defend this person. He used regular physical force. He very well could have used deadly physical force in that case, because this person was using deadly physical force. But he chose to use regular physical force, and he did, and it was successful. It worked. He disarmed the student. And then his punishment, I think he should have got a medal. I mean, he should have been brought up on in the auditorium. The whole class should have been assembled, and he should have been given a medal. But instead, he was suspended. So, yeah, very strange days we live in right now with all this gun craziness, and that's exactly where this comes from. It's the gun crazies out there, the ones that think that by having a zero gun policy, gun tolerance, that these things, they will somehow stop these things from happening. Well, you can see that it doesn't stop it from happening. It just creates more craziness.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want.
Yeah, you said it doesn't stop things from happening. I was watching a show the other day where one of the folks on the TV was really promoting this whole gun control thing, and he was talking to a radio his title on the thing was conservative radio talk show host. I don't know who that person was, but the person, they were specifically talking about Columbine, and the radio talk show host stated that there were some 21 gun laws that were violated by the perpetrators of the Columbine massacre. And he asked the TV host that has the program, and he's promoting this anti-gun thing. Can I say his name?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
It was on the Piers Morgan show.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yep.
So anyway, Piers Morgan brings up, no, of course it wouldn't make a difference to have it, but why not try harder? And then Piers Morgan actually made a statement, I don't know the exact quote, but very similar to, there were 81,000 violations of the background check program, which means 81,000 people did attempt to purchase a gun illegally, yet there were zero prosecutions. Mm-hmm. So they're not even working on the laws that they have, and here was an opportunity to actually identify and prosecute 80,000 people that they did not prosecute.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Does it surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me in the least bit,
Okay.
but they go, and then you these things start to evolve into these ridiculous zero tolerance situations.
Yeah. Well, just take the TSA, for example. Do you know how many terrorists the TSA have caught since they've enacted this the TSA?
No, but I heard in about the last 10 years they've discovered 3 natural blondes.
Okay. Well, they've actually discovered no terrorists.
Joe
though.
just got it. Yeah.
They've actually
And a
discovered,
couple of cross-dressers, right?
Yeah, but they've actually discovered no terrorists. So,
No, exactly.
But they violated a lot of rights in that time. So
Absolutely.
And we look. No one is surprised, I'm sure, by this. We all knew this. I mean, we commented on this years before it was even here. That this is exactly the way it would turn out, and it did turn out that way. But like I say, no surprise there on government programs not doing what they're intended to do. But getting on with the news, Jodi Arias was grilled yesterday. She was asked 150 questions from the jury. Of course, the judge was the one that actually read the questions, but she was asked all types of different questions, ranging from, why didn't you ever report the accusations of abuse if you were being abused? And, why is your memory so that you can remember so much minutia about your life, yet you can recall so little from every day. You can recall so little from the day you savagely stabbed and shot the victim, and a lot of other questions too. So the Jodi Arias is still going on that whole episode there, and that should be going on for a while in the news. So that'll be something we'll be talking about still for a while here. Did you have something you wanted to add about that?
You know what? Yeah, Jodi Arias, obviously, it's known all over the country. She's on Nancy Grace and every television screen from coast to coast. And I know this because my mom called me from Boston yesterday, and I was sharing with Mike before we came in. And she said, "Hey, Johnny, is that Jodi Arias thing happening near your neck of the woods?" And like, as a matter of fact, it's in the county that I live in. And I did discuss Mark and how Mark is the go-to guy on all the local media shows for advice for the talking folks on the television screens.
Yeah, Mark's been on several shows lately about that.
I think he's been on every local channel, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So,
Right on.
so I was explaining my affiliation with her, and she's like, "Oh, if you ever get a chance, I want you to," she said something ridiculous to me, and I brought the attention to my mother. I'm like, Mom, this is exactly the type of person that we've got to have the rule of law for, because kind of like the TSA and these other slippery slopes topics that we've talked about in the past, is if you don't set the bar high on this case, where do they start lowering the bar? And I asked her, I said, "Mom, do you know a guy, do you remember the name Bill Maycumber?" And she's like, "No, who's he?" I go, "How about Ray Crone? Do you remember him?" And she says, "No, I don't know." And I said, both of those guys were Ray Crone specifically was sentenced to death, and he was exonerated. After he served 10 years, 2 of those years were on death row. He was exonerated through DNA evidence. And Bill Maycumber was sentenced to 2 life sentences, and he served 40 years of those. So, I mean, here's a case where there's prosecutors were not conducting themselves properly, and these gentlemen, they served. One was going to be put to death because people weren't, given or doing their jobs properly, or they weren't given a decent defense or kept in check.
Well, that's right. See, I mean, what country would you rather live in? A country where someone is accused of a crime and we just cart them off to jail or the gallows and just do away with them and that's that? Or would you rather have due process where we actually look? I'll admit, I think she's guilty, but it's not up to me. I'm not the jury. I haven't heard all the evidence in this case. Just from what I hear, yes, it seems like she's obviously guilty, but I would never want somebody to put somebody away or take their life based on what I thought or what anyone else thought. That's crazy. That's why we have a justice system. We're supposed to have a system to where 12 other people get to look at all the evidence, and they get to hear everything, and they get to decide. And that's a lot better way than just bringing somebody out in the street and shooting them because they've been accused of something. And I guess a lot of people don't see it that way, but unless it was happening to them, then they might. But this is a much better process. The process we have has got a lot of problems, no question about it. Our justice system is riddled with problems, but it's still better than probably anything else that's out there. So I'll stick with that, and I hope that that never changes. I don't ever want to see the day come where we just start, vigilante justice, and somebody's accused of something, we just shoot them.
And that's you always hear, well, if you're not doing anything, you got nothing to be afraid of. Conversely, there's so many times in history where, that's not the way it started out. And I don't know the name of the gentleman, the reverend in Poland that wrote it. I think it was Poland. And the last line is when they came for me.
Yes.
They came for the communist, and
I wasn't a communist, so I didn't care.
They came for the socialist, and then but when they came for me,
there was no one left.
There was no one left to speak.
Yeah.
Which goes right in the line of freedom. You got to stand up for everybody's right of freedom and privacy.
Which comes down to exactly what Mark talks about on every show. Most people are for freedom only in things that they agree with. Mm-hmm. If I drink beer, I'm for everyone's right to drink beer.
Right.
Well, that's great, but that doesn't really say you're for freedom. That just means you like to have you like other people to have the same freedoms that you enjoy.
Exactly.
What is really freedom is to say something like, I don't smoke marijuana, but you know what? I don't have any problem with other people doing so as long as they do it so peacefully and they don't cause any problems. I've got no problem with it.
Right.
Isn't that a much better attitude?
Absolutely. When it comes to freedom, you really can't go wrong. I have a 15-year-old son, and I like to think I'm raising him in freedom.
Good.
And he brings up a lot of concepts. Hey, Dad, why don't we just do this? And I look at my duty as a parent. Okay, here's an opportunity where he doesn't quite grasp everything, so I have to get him to look at all of the ramifications of what he just said to me. And it was something along the lines of, why don't we just put them away?
Yeah.
And, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt of being a 15-year-old boy, but it opens up the opportunity for me, being a parent, where I can say, you know what, let's look at this from a freedom perspective. Let's look at this from those people's perspective. Are they really bothering you? If they're doing whatever it is they're doing, are they really bothering you? No. Yeah. I'm like, well, what about some of the things that you do that are annoying?
Yeah.
How about if they said, hey, let's lock up that Mason kid for no apparent reason because he's annoying me?
Yeah, I mean that's it exactly. I mean, are you a big enough person to accept someone else doing something that you may not even like yourself, but what they're doing is peaceful and it's not harming anyone else? And as long as it's peaceful and it's not harming anyone else, then why should you care? What do you care that I don't know? Let's say your neighbors, the two gay guys live across from you, and does this bother you in some way? Why? I mean, I'm not gay, but I don't care if the guys across the street from me are gay. It doesn't bother me at all, as long as I guess they're not, putting it in my face, and I don't have to, they're not leaving their windows open, and I have to see all their activity. I guess that's fine. But as long as they're being peaceful and they're being private about it, and I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. But there are people out there that this would really be a big problem. They would feel like they had to inflict their morality on their neighbor, and that's what we talk about on this show. Is that are you really for freedom? And unfortunately, most people are really not. Now, they will say they are. You can stand up in any room and say, are you for freedom? And everybody will hold up their hand and say, oh, yeah, I'm for freedom. Then you start questioning further, and they start backing down. Well, no, I don't think people should be able to smoke marijuana. Well, and then you're not really for freedom. You're not really for freedom if you think that you should have the right to tell other people how to live their lives. You are not for freedom. So, that's what a lot of things we go over on the show. But we're going to go over something else here today, kind of not really, a little bit away from freedom type issues. We want to talk about food today. So he's got some interesting things about food. Not probably exactly like what you think. No, it's probably not exactly what you think, Joe. Not necessarily about eating food. Well, it is about eating food, but some of the things that are in our food.
Right.
So I'm going to let C take a little bit from here because he's got a lot more information on this, and I'll bring in as we go too.
I actually called in a couple of weeks ago, and I was ranting about some of our food supply issues that we have, and back in the 30s, everybody knows about the Dust Bowls and what happened back then. The crops failed, and the government stepped in and they started doing their price fixing so that they could encourage the farmers to let some of their fields lie fallow so that they could recuperate and actually grow a crop, and so they started subsidizing these things, and of course that was a good intention. Protect the farmers from over farming their lands, and of course the catastrophic failures of the farmers doing that. And keep that in mind as we're moving forward. And then in 1970, something amazing happened. The Japanese discovered that they could take corn and pull out a high fructose corn syrup. And from 1970 to, I guess it was 1990, 20 years, the consumption of high fructose corn syrup went up tenfold, 10 times the amount, 1,000% of what when they originally started using this stuff. And of course, with all of the farm subsidies, the cost of the corn goes down. This product becomes extremely inexpensive to put into the food supply. Again, this is all something that's reinforced by the government. Why not grow a decent crop or leave the crop just lying fallow? They're just going to grow this product for virtually nothing, and they get this product that now all the food manufacturers are using high fructose corn syrup.
It's in everything too, because I can almost take any product and read the back, and you're going to see that product in there.
It is. I have a little quick aside. A friend of mine, she's 2 now. His daughter was allergic to corn at birth, and they had to actually do a 100% organic diet of food that they took from the raw to feed this baby. I mean, she had to be obviously breastfed, but as she was getting to be 4, 5, and 6 months old, everything was just like all fresh vegetables. This is not a bad thing.
Yeah, no.
But, the comment that he made was, you would not believe what corn isn't in.
Yeah.
To go to what Mike just said, corn is in everything.
Just take anything you're eating and read the back ingredients. You will find high fructose corn, most likely find high fructose
the worst part of it is, if you go with sugar-free stuff, then you're getting the Splenda and the chemicals, which I was just reading yesterday. Over,
and I have something to say about that too.
You can tell me if this is true. Over 86 degrees,
yes,
it turns into formaldehyde.
Did I send that to you?
Did you?
I think I did because I sent it around.
And then formic acid.
I've been having a problem lately because with digestive problems, different things, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and not.
I'll give you an enema
right.
on the break.
What's that?
I'll give you a quick enema on break.
Okay. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then I started, so a couple days ago, I decided to put into Google some of my symptoms, right, just to see what would come back. Everything that came back kept coming back to Splenda. So I started reading these reports, and I found that out that Splenda is not this safe sweetener that they promote it as, because they say it's just like sugar. Well, it is just like sugar, with the one exception. They changed the molecular structure. They changed the molecular structure of the sugar. So it is no longer just like sugar. And what happens is, like you said, once you heat this up now past 86
and
degrees.
86 is nothing in Arizona.
Well,
You got something sitting on your counter in your, anywhere.
Put it in your coffee. You've already done that.
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
You store it into your coffee. You've already now changed it into formaldehyde.
And I mean, how many people take sodas cases and set them out in their utility room or their pantry?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's some dangerous stuff, man.
There was a story about a lady, and we're going to get back to this. Let me just, since we got on this subject.
Okay.
There was a story about a lady who was just, all the time she was sick, she'd go to the doctor, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. She kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And she ended up in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk. And she was preparing for her death. Because no one could find out what was wrong with her, but she knew she was dying from the inside. She felt like she was being poisoned from the inside. And some doctor in the UK, I think it was, or somewhere, found out about this and contacted her and asked her, did she drink diet soda? And she said yes, 12 to 15 cans a day. He said,
wow.
Stop drinking it and don't take anything with any artificial sweeteners from it. Within 2 or 3 days after that incident, she got out of the wheelchair and started walking, and she made a full recovery.
I'm going to make this real quick because I know you get stuff to talk about, but I'm going to tell you, when I was drinking, no joke, and I didn't know how many. You don't realize how much soda you're drinking. I was drinking over a case a day.
Wow. And it was diet?
Diet.
Yeah.
Well, around January of last year, about a year ago, I started getting these pains in my side, and I didn't know what it was. And it took me until November to figure out it was the diet soda. Yeah. I haven't been drinking, very few. I may drink one, or even if I'm having a big time day, maybe two, because it's terrible. I crave it. But I'll tell you, I haven't had a pain in my side.
That was the other thing I was going to mention. It's not non-caloric either, because what happens when it turns to fulvic acid is it makes you crave carbohydrates.
Right.
So you eat more.
So you eat 3 or 4 loaves of bread.
You do not lose weight with it. And that's the big myth too. So when you're saying, well, yeah, but I need it to, no, not really. Some of the alternatives are better, or stevia.
And that's all we eat now is the stevia. And you know what that is, don't you?
It's a plant extract.
It's a naturally occurring plant in Central America, and they crush it, they dry it, they crush up the leaves, kind of like marijuana, I think.
Yeah.
And then they powder it.
And amazing,
and then it's like sugar.
Because it's natural, right?
Right.
So we're always taking this processed stuff, and we're always, thinking it's better, but it's not. So I laid off in the last couple of days. I haven't used that stuff in anything.
You're looking fresher today.
I feel a ton better.
A lot more energy,
A lot more. That's another thing. It makes you lethargic.
Dude, I couldn't get out of bed.
Yes.
I was like,
yes. All I want to do was sleep. I'm telling you, there's something to it. And people, are laughing at me and telling me, you're just making that. No, there is something to it. The few days I've been off of it, I feel more energy. I feel like I can think better. There's definitely something to it. And if anyone wants to try it, just do your own experiment. If you're a big user like I was, I would, coffee, tea, I'm dumping it in everything.
Everything.
And if you're that way too, lay off for a couple of days and just see if you don't feel different.
And you're thinking you're doing yourself a favor because you're not eating the sugar.
That's
but you're
what I was thinking.
But you're putting poison in it.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Well, the basic physiology of our bodies is we're not designed as machines to use that as a fuel.
Yep.
When you're digesting food, and forgive me if I'm getting a little technical here, but I'm in nursing school, so I'm about to graduate. Going to be a nurse. Hopefully, my sister will pin me. She's a nurse as well back east, and we have. But our bodies are designed to digest simple carbohydrates, which sugar is. It's the simplest. Glucose or sucrose is the simplest. And what happens when sucrose, a natural sugar, goes in our body? Our pancreas shoots off insulin. And insulin is a hormone that helps open up our cells to receive it. But in addition to that, while it's floating around in our bodies, it says, hey, I got some energy here. Stop putting stuff in your face. We're good. But fructose doesn't have that mechanism. It doesn't. Your body doesn't use fructose in the cells. Therefore, your pancreas isn't going to put off the insulin. What happens, it's digested through your liver. All of those carbohydrates and everything that you brought into your body that it's holding this fructose in, artificially sweetened, guess what? Your body didn't get the signal that it was nourished. So guess what? You're still hungry.
Wow.
That's why you can eat a box of Oreo cookies.
That's why I was always hungry.
I mean, that's why you can, exactly. It's like, I can't believe I just ate a box of Oreo cookies. I'm still hungry. This is ridiculous.
Well, I've never ate a whole box of Oreo cookies. I can't say I've done that, but I do know what you mean about what you're saying, though, because I felt that way about other things, too. And, I just, for the last, over 2 days now, I used to wake up in the morning, it was coffee, 2 packets of Splenda, because I like it. Like Christian Slater said in the movie True Romance, I'm not happy till the spoon stands straight up.
Correct.
So I like my coffee sweet. And so it's 2 packets of Splenda, 2 packets with the tea in the afternoon. I'm eating yogurt that has the Splenda in it because it's, the no-calorie yogurt.
It tastes great.
So the next thing, I start checking everything out, and I'm consuming so much Splenda in a day's time that you could kill a rat with it. And I'm just started thinking, is this... And it didn't hit me until I started putting the symptoms of the lethargic feeling and the digestional problems into Google to see what came back. Everything came back to Splenda, and then it hit me. Bing! This is my problem.
Yeah, I even see your hair starting to grow back.
Well, I don't know if it's going to cure that, but I feel a lot better, and I don't have the digestive problems that I have, and I don't feel the letharginess that I felt, and so I know there's something to it. And if anybody wants to try this experiment on their own, that's listening to this and thinking, wow, I also eat a lot of stuff with artificial sweeteners, just try laying off for a couple of days and see if you don't feel a difference. And I think you'll agree that you do. Mm-hmm. Now, let's get back to what C was talking. I didn't mean to interrupt you, C. He was in the middle of a roll.
I have no idea what I was talking about.
Don't you hate that? Somebody interrupts you, and then you're like, what was I talking about?
I got a line right here. I think I'm supposed to start here. But of course, the Japanese, they invented or discovered, I shouldn't say they invented, they discovered the process or made it very efficient to get this high fructose corn syrup out of corn. And of course, that set that ball rolling. From 1970 to 1990, 20 years time, we're using 10 times the amount of this product. And of course, if you look at from 1970, and this is a CDC backed up fact, if you look at from 1970 to 2000, that 30-year period, childhood obesity increased 300%. So. And of course, all the problems that get associated with
all the type 2 diabetes had a massive amount.
Right, you get all of the problems that are associated with that. And of course, there are some folks that are doing their research on it, and they're claiming that no, it's not. It's because of the indolent lifestyle that we've adopted. That we're more computer oriented. We're more of this oriented, that as opposed to sending our kids out to play and ride their bikes and things of that nature. But there's definitely a correlation. When you're feeding kids food that they're not hungry with, or that's not satisfying their hunger, and then, in the correlation of time, there's definitely something in there. And I was just reading a couple of studies, and I'm looking at the peer-reviewed journals that they're in, and I'm like, who's funding these things? And you look back, and it's part of the same lobbying groups that are lobbying for the food manufacturers. So all the things that I just said about the Oreo cookies, there's research, of course, that's funded by Nestle, Can I say that?
Yeah,
Of
I
course.
just did.
See, you can say
It's
whatever
all
you like.
good.
But
we're not regulated here.
there.
You keep asking, can you say that?
You
Yes.
you can do that.
You get these studies that are funded by the manufacturers, and of course,
And they're going to be biased.
they're going to be biased. Are they going to let? Oh no, this product is.
So, what can people do with their kids? Everybody really knows about diet stuff. I mean, I knew about it because I didn't want my kids eating it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's
Well,
good.
you should
I'm
just be
eating my
careful
kids
what you
aren't.
feed them. I mean, you know what's good, man. I mean, if it's loaded with high fructose corn syrup and these other things, you know it's not good.
So get a blender and start brine some fruits and start making smoothies instead of milkshakes, and stuff like that.
You can't trust the label though either.
That's true. Yep.
Back
Good point.
to my
Good
son.
point.
We were stopping at the store. We ran inside, grabbed a couple of iced teas, and the label, largest letters on the label, larger than the actual name of the product, 100% natural.
I always like that because sugar is natural. There's a lot of arsenic is natural.
They call high fructose corn syrup 100%
That's natural.
because
It's
it comes
corn.
from corn.
It's corn. It's natural.
Wow.
Well, the derivative, and I forget what the labeling laws are specifically, and I did look them up, but I forget the labeling laws don't apply to some of these sweeteners. So it has to do with coloring. So there's no artificial
Jeez.
coloring. So as long as you don't put certain ingredients in, you are still allowed to call it. And of course, we go back to who's the lobbyist. Mm-hmm. And this is the government that's
People that paid the government money to vote their way so they could get. Yeah,
and,
exactly.
When George Bush, 43, when he was president, his director of the FDA was in the private sector, working for the largest food manufacturers. Probably something similar along the lines of ConAgra. I don't want to say that person specifically there, but in a company of that magnitude. And when Bill Clinton was president, his FDA director was in the private sector. And those two gentlemen just switched jobs when one was president, one was in the FDA. When the other was president, the other one was in the FDA.
Oh, nice.
So, these are political positions. So the guy in the private sector, and I don't beget business for having this opportunity if it's there. But the government wasn't doling out money, the private sector wouldn't be sending the lobbyists.
And that's a good point, see. People always blame big business for these kind of things. Well, it's not big business's fault. I mean, if the government wasn't there to be, the one that comes in and they get to use the government as their, hammer, if that possibility wasn't there, this stuff wouldn't happen. I mean, government is the one to ultimately blame, not big business. Big business is just doing what big business is going to do. They're going to try to make a profit. I mean, you can't blame them for that. The problem is they get to use government, for the purposes of they use it. That's where the problem is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's again, you can't beget the companies from doing this because the governments are handing out the money. You look at back to the crop subsidies. $80 billion is going to pay for a product that nobody really wants, but we've got to make sure that the farmers stay, they can pay their mortgages because they have to get more efficient. And it's loosely correlated, but it is correlated because now all of a sudden we've got this product that a farmer can grow and sell for less than it actually costs to grow it. And that stuff goes all the way south of the border to Mexico via the North American Free Trade Agreement, which Bill Clinton signed in 96. Well, what are all these farmers in Mexico going to be doing with a product that they can't sell because it costs more than what they're buying it for? It costs more to grow and produce than what they can buy the whole product for that's coming down south of the border. Well, now all of these guys have to find jobs. Where are they going to go?
Here.
They're going to come north of the border, and then we have somebody running around rounding up all the illegals because they're just looking for a living.
It's all tied in, isn't it?
Again, it's loose correlation is what we would call it on the psych floor, But
Yeah.
you know, somebody might say I'm a little psychotic on that. But I mean, there's definitely some tie-ins there.
Oh, I can see that. And getting back to the unnatural sweeteners, the artificial sweeteners. I also read when I was reading up on this stuff that that's really when all these drugs came in, like the Prozac and those other mood-altering drugs. Those drugs came in to affect the what this stuff was doing to kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that we really don't need Prozac and all these. That's not what we need. We just need to get our kids off this crap.
Yeah, exactly.
And because and think about it, when we were kids, we never had these things, right? You never heard of these things. No one ever said Joey's on Prozac. Or, what the hell's Prozac? I mean, every once in a while you'd see an unruly kid, but it was just thought of as a bratty kid. Maybe his parents didn't discipline him or something. But you never doped kids up. You know what I mean? You never heard of such a thing.
Exactly.
And this all started after all this food manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Then there were problems. And then we had to treat the problems. So then the drugs came out to treat the problems that the food was actually causing.
Mm-hmm.
So it is all tied in. See, it's all tied in. The pharmaceuticals are tied in with the food, and it's just I hate to sound. A lot of people are out there thinking, "Well, this guy sounds like a conspiracy theorist." But like I said a couple weeks ago, not all conspiracies are conspiracies, and not all of them are theories.
Exactly.
There's some are, some aren't. But I do, from personal experience, I can tell you that. There's something to the artificial sweeteners, and people ought to really consider, especially if you're giving it to your kids, you ought to really think about trying to wean that way down, if not totally cut off, but wean it way down. The diet sodas, those are the worst things for you. They're not diet, first of all, and they cause more harm than good. So you're not even losing weight with them, so what's the purpose?
Yeah, the changes in the food supply. I remember growing up, watching my grandmother make her meatballs, and in fact, my mother, for that matter, they would stick their hands into raw hamburger with raw eggs, mixing the ingredients, and putting the cheese in there and tasting as they go along. Mm-hmm. I remember walking through, I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but it was it's one of those restaurants where you'd walk down. It wasn't fancy. You walk down with the tray.
Cafeteria?
It was like a cafeteria style, maybe like a Sizzler. And, I remember ordering this chopped sirloin steak. I might have been 4 years old. And I remember my mom was in front of me and my sister was on the other side of me. And I didn't know what I was ordering. And my mom ordered it medium rare. So I'm like, well, I want mine medium rare too. I don't know what I was getting. But here I am, a 4-year-old eating a medium rare hamburger, and then 25 years later, it's now against the law to get a medium rare hamburger.
Oh, you can't get medium? I knew you couldn't get rare, but you can't get medium rare?
I mean, I had to go. I went, I think it was Red Robin. I ordered a hamburger, and I said, I want a medium rare. And I don't want to say I took it out on the poor girl, but I asked her, I said, do you mind if I go on a little bit of a rant here? I said, I've been eating medium rare hamburgers for 44 years. I can afford one more. Please give me a medium rare hamburger.
And she probably said, I can't do it.
She says, I can't do it. I'm like, all right, I'll have the chicken, because the government's there to protect me.
Yeah, sure. Well, I got a story about that. In my younger days, I was a cook, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes
back.
Well,
that was my first profession.
Yeah, this goes back 25 years or more.
Uh-huh.
And I was I'll even tell this part of the story. I cooked with Marc. We were both cooks. Marc was in college at the time.
That's a great story.
So, we were cooking at a place called Bickford's in Massachusetts. And I was on a late shift one night, and the waitress, I still remember, this is so strange, because I still remember everything about it. The waitress's name was Helen. And Helen comes up to the slide, and she orders and this was like it's 25 years ago when you could do this. She orders a hamburger rare. So I said, okay. So I pull it out and throw it on the grill and, cook it to where it's brown but still very bloody. Flipped it over, it's brown. So it's brown on both sides, but blood is coming out everywhere.
Right.
Put it on the bun, send it over the slide. She brings it back and says, it's not rare enough. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. So I throw another hamburger on, and this time, a lot less. This time there's just blood everywhere. It was completely bloody now, to the point where it was completely red on the inside, and it was as rare as you could be, just barely cooked on the outside. Send it over the slide, and she comes back and says, it's not rare enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little cocky, so I take out another one, throw it on counted to 3, 1, 2, 3, flipped it over, counted to 3, 1, 2, 3, and threw it on the bun. Never heard another word. Apparently that was what they wanted. They wanted a raw hamburger.
But how long ago again was this?
25 years ago.
Right. So, again, you look at our food supply and look at the influences that have been put into our food supply since that period of time. I think back then there might have been 100 meat packers.
Yeah.
Now there's probably 3 major meat packers that source all of our food.
And even talking about that, the old days, I can remember my great grandmother when I was very young. They had a farm. And I would go sometimes visit them and even stay overnight and stuff like that, and help them work the farm and stuff like that. And I can remember my grandfather getting up before the crack. It was still dark outside to go plow the fields. But before he left, they had a big breakfast in the morning. And my grandmother would make the things that people would think were outrageous today. I mean, she'd cook up all this bacon and then leave the grease in the pan, and then put the eggs in there and make scrambled eggs in the baking grease, right? And and they ate all this stuff. And today people would think you were nuts, if you
exactly.
But yet they went out and they worked hard all day, right? Sweated, and they had no help. They lived to be in their hundreds.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's different than if you just ate something like that and sat in front of the TV watching MTV all day. That's the difference. They didn't do that. They actually went out and got exercise. They worked. They really worked hard. So anything they ate like that may have not been the best for them, they got out of their system by working. He's on the tractor 10 hours working the fields, And that's the difference. You couldn't live that lifestyle today with the way people live their life today, sitting in front of the TV after breakfast. Or we don't get any. I'll admit, I'm the biggest culprit. I sit in a chair most of the day at work, and get very little exercise.
Right.
So that's the problem.
Well, you know what? Yes and no. I mean, you can still eat like that, but again, back to the food chain supply, we're hyper-regulated to the point where the small farmer can't produce and sell meat locally. I'm sorry to tell stories about from my hometown, but I think it was last year or the year before, a small turkey farm just went under. And I remember going into turkeys. We'd get our turkey there, and I mean, these were live turkeys. We didn't actually watch them get slaughtered, but I mean, those types of places existed. And back to when you were selling that hamburger, which probably would kill somebody today. But see, everything is processed centrally in these 4 major food packers. So all of this beef is coming in from all over the country. So all of that time, say, let's say Washington State, and everything's processed in Denver. And I'm not exactly sure on these facts, but that meat has to travel in something, so you got 2-3 days of travel time for what's going to be put into that hamburger to develop and grow into E. coli. When I was first joined the Marine Corps, I was in California, and I went out to dinner. I had a steak, and I'm like, wow, this tastes really different. This is 1983, 84, and my taste buds were a little bit jaunted from the food they served me at Paris Island, I'm sure. But I remember having a steak, and it was truly delicious. And I was talking to the guy that cooked it, because before I went to the Marine Corps, I was working at a hotel cooking as well. And I said, why does this taste so different? And he says, well, a lot of our food is open range. Open range. I didn't know what that meant. We were in the high desert. I was at 29 Palms, California. And, you drive around through the high desert, and you see a lot of open range cattle between L.A. and even if you go down to southern Arizona. That was our food supply back then. It was local. It was relatively close. And I'm not advocating becoming a vegan or becoming some organic hippie and, peace, love, dope, that kind of thing. But the hyper-regulation of the government, saying, hey, these are the standards that you now have to keep. They're saying this is the acceptable level of E. coli.
And there is that, yeah.
Which means there is some E. coli in our food. Of course, our bodies and our systems can handle it. But now they go after these smaller farmers that don't have multi-million-dollar cleaning facilities. Well, they don't need it, because they're slaughtering the animal and they're packaging it and they're selling it and they're eating it right away. And instead of going, days and weeks from slaughter to shelf, it's literally hours. And the stability of the food back then was much easier, much easier to manage than it is today. So now I can't get a medium rare hamburger because ConAgra packs my food in
An interesting story I heard about milk one time too was that this happened a few years back. The dairy association, whoever does that monitors, I'm not sure whoever that monitors the milk. There's so many parts of different things that can be in milk, and there's they measure, they test it. It can have so many parts of urine, so many parts of mucus, so many parts of blood, so many parts of feces, so many parts of these different things. And milk has, by the way, everything I just mentioned, milk has in it, but very limited amounts. But they have limits on to what that amount can be. Well, what happened was, because of the push to produce more milk, these limits were being reached, were being exceeded. So they didn't know how to handle this. They were trying to figure out how they could do this. Well, I think it was the FDA or whoever handles it, they came up with a brilliant idea to take care of this problem. They decided they would raise the level.
Raise the level.
So if it was 1 million parts per whatever, they just said, okay, now you can have 3 million parts per, or whatever it turns out to be. They just raised the level. And so now they were within standards again, and everything's fine.
Everything is fine.
I love that. A government solution, there's no better than a government solution, right?
And I'm sure there was a lobbyist in there somewhere along the way that said, I think Jay Leno did a joke like that about cereal.
Yeah.
You know, there was an unacceptable level of bug parts, and
there is too. Yeah.
You know, in his comedic nature, he says that means there's an acceptable level of bug parts inside these boxes of food.
And there is. He was making a joke, but there really is. That's what he maybe didn't even know, was there is an acceptable level of bug parts.
Exactly.
And the government says you can't have more than this. Because, look, this grain, all this stuff, it sits around in silos for a long time. You're going to get bugs. There's just you're not going to have any way to avoid it.
You realize we're grossing a lot of people out right now?
Well, I mean, maybe this is something you needed to know, you know? So sorry if that's happening, but this is the truth about our food supply. And I wanted to bring C in today to talk about that, because he had some really good points. And did you go over everything? Did you have some more to go over there?
You know, I think the audience probably this guy needs to stop right now. Let's go back to a more pro freedom approach.
Okay, I hope everybody enjoyed our little break on food there. But and I don't know where Joe. Here's Joe. I started to say our producer just left us. I didn't know where he went.
I had to go throw up.
Sorry about that, Joe.
I wanted to go eat a few bugs on my sandwich.
Okay.
I'm sure my mother's in Florida right now, going, "Oh, that's my son."
I was literally starting to feel sick out there.
Really?
Right before you said, I go, Darlene, I think I'm going to puke in a minute. You go, everyone out there is probably starting to feel pretty sick about right now. Yeah,
that's funny. Well, you know, we can not talk about it. Sure, we can not talk. We can stick our head in the sands and act like it doesn't exist.
It's a good thing to talk about,
but it does exist. You know,
I mean, just think about when they're making chocolate and all that stuff. I mean, I've done a lot of reading too, and there's a certain amount of rat crap and actually rodents, pests that can be in that chocolate.
Of course,
it's like, oh, this is going to be pure chocolate. But
everything to do with food has contaminants in it.
And just we started this conversation on high fructose corn syrup, so we're not saying it's the corn growers. So please don't sue us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not the corn growers. They're not to blame. But
have you noticed that? Have you had a candy bar in the last couple of years?
They've changed.
They don't taste the same.
Really?
They don't.
The recipes are physically different.
Yeah, no.
I haven't noticed.
Well, you know what? Boston, I grew up just outside of Boston, and that's Dunkin' Donuts Mecca.
Yeah.
It is.
Dunkin' Donuts is definitely different.
It's every 15 feet there's a Dunkin' Donuts.
Yep.
There's a Dunkin' Donuts inside the shoe store. I mean, it's just Dunkin' Donuts is everywhere. You see those signs. And when Dunkin' Donuts came out here, I was one of these silly people that waited in line for 3 hours to get my Dunkin' Donut. Well, let me tell you something. I got my honeydew Dunkin' Donut, and I was disappointed. It didn't taste the way I remembered it. They definitely have changed. Now I've been in Arizona for 22 plus years. You know, so, and when did Dunkin' Donuts arrive here?
Oh, I don't know.
A long time ago.
But it's been in Boston forever.
But you know, so I mean, I don't know if there's a high fructose corn syrup connection there in the glazing, maybe, as opposed to being sugar that would have been
maybe
used. Because I know if you go to the local Bosa donut shop here, free plug, those things are still fantastic, and I'm sure they're using a more natural, closely local recipe.
I didn't know that, but I'm not a donut connoisseur, really. So
You know what? I would love to say I'm not, but I succumbed this morning to my temptation.
Yeah. No, I've never been big on donuts. I mean, one is about all I can really stomach. Then I start getting this really over-sugared feeling.
Right.
It's like, ugh, so I can't do more than about one donut at a time. But
that's all I had. I mean, it was probably 30 days since I had my, last one. So if I go another 30 days, they'll give me a chip.
Nice. I can easily eat 6 to 12 donuts.
Yeah.
No, but I think, okay, so I think Steve's gone over everything he wanted to go over today about the GMO, the food.
Those are definitely my brain droppings, and that phrase comes from Dr. Neil deGrasse. I can't take credit for that phrase, but...
Well, that's all right. And so I did. Last few minutes of the show here, we'll go over some other things that are going on. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but probably a lot of people do. Marc is going to be running for Congress in 2014, and he's first got to go through the primary, where he's got to face against some other Republicans, and he is running as a Republican. The ultimate goal is to get to the actual general election, where he can run against Kirsten Sinema. And so that's going to be interesting. We're looking forward to that. And we've got the website up now. It is markvictorforcongress.com. And we've got a donate link on there. And yes, that's what I'm doing right now. I am pandering. We need money. Let's face it, folks. It's a campaign, and you can't run a campaign without money. So I am pandering, and I'm asking if you can, and you support freedom, and you would like to see a pro-freedom candidate make it to Washington, then you could help us out. We could use any donation you can. No donation is too small. Please help us out. It's markvictorforcongress.com. There's a lot of information on that page. Read the page, find out what Marc's about, and if it sounds like something that you're for, help us out. We could sure use it.
You know what? I know that this show goes out all over the country, and just because you're not going to be in Arizona's Congressional District 9, one congressman in a district that is pro-freedom. I mean, Ron Paul was a Texas congressman from one small district representing the same amount of people that Marc will be representing here. He made a huge impact in American politics. So, I mean, if you guys are out around the country and you're a little frustrated, maybe some folks from our old neck of the woods back in Massachusetts, and if we got time, I got a story, and you're frustrated, you're living in Barney Frank's district or one of the Kennedy's districts back there, give us a look, because I know you're not donating money to those guys, but and this type of candidate out here can make a national impact.
Well, look at what one man can do yesterday, like with what Rand Paul did.
Exactly.
I mean, there's what one man can do. People say, what can one man do? Well, there's what one man did yesterday. One man held up an entire process yesterday by himself. So when you're sitting there saying, it sounds good, but what can one man do? There's a good example of what one man did. And so see, if you've got a story for us, we got a few minutes here. If you've got a story, go ahead and give us your story.
This isn't my proudest moment, but I was 12 years old. I grew up in what was Barney Frank's first congressional district. And the town that I was born in, the mayor of that town was friends with my mom. And my mom we did this luau in our backyard. And we raised money for the candidate that ran against Barney Frank. So we were not successful enough in our cooking endeavors to get Mayor Clark. Otherwise, things would have been changed dramatically, I'm sure, in the national politics spectrum. But Barney Frank did call my mom and said, "Hey, will you do the same thing for us?" We didn't.
Wow.
We did not participate, so I don't want to get blamed for that. But I actually have a link to those awful political happenings back east.
Wow, look at that. Small world, huh?
But I've changed. I've evolved.
Okay, I think that's about all we've got for today. I think we'll let Joe take us out. Before he does, I'd just like to remind everybody, you can reach us at attorneyforfreedom.com. That's attorney, F-O-R, freedom.com. Hopefully Mark will be on the show next week. He's been very busy lately. If anybody's been watching the media, you know he's always on the media, either about Jodi Arias or some other subject that's going on, or one of our own cases, like Elizabeth Johnson. So he is very busy. He would love to be here. Mark never passes an opportunity in front of a mic, folks, so don't think that he's trying to get out. He's not. It's just that things come up. So anyway, we'll see you next week. And on that note, Joe, take us out.
Freedom is the answer. What's the question? You have been listening to the Attorney for Freedom radio show, hosted by the original man of peace and high-profile attorney for freedom, Marc J. Victor. See you next week, same time, for another dose of freedom. Until then, peace out.